Hey guys, welcome back to the Horror with your host with the most, Jenna, as always. Welcome back. So today I'm going to be talking about a documentary that I watched the other night, Monday night, I believe. It is on Netflix. I will let you guys know that it's on Netflix. Maybe it could be at other places, but I watched it on Netflix. A documentary called Who Took Jonny? Now this is a documentary about like a 12 or 13-year-old boy who was getting ready to go deliver the Sunday papers or something over in Des Moines, Iowa in 1982, and he just kind of disappeared. And this documentary kind of goes through like the different speculations, the sort of conflicts between like the police department and the family and everything. Just a pretty interesting documentary. Now, of course, I wasn't born in 1982. I was actually born 2 years later. And I really didn't even know about this until I watched the documentary the other night. But it's a little scary because Iowa is literally like it's like right next door to Illinois and everything. So it's kind of like, whoa, small town and everything. It's like that happens in small towns. So it's a little scary. But yeah, but like I was saying, it's this boy, Johnny Gosh, who was just basically kidnapped. I believe he was kidnapped. I know for a fact that he was kidnapped. Like I said, the movie kind of goes through like the different stuff, looking at different evidence and stuff, or lack thereof evidence, as the police say. And I don't know, it's pretty interesting. I feel like, there's almost like if you have seen something like Paradise Lost or that murder one that came out last year, Building a Murder or something like that. Whatever. But it's kind of like you're watching it, at least for me when I was watching it, Making a Murderer. That's what I was trying to think of. Hey, brain fart. God, why did I put lipstick on if I'm drinking? Whatever. But it's, as I was about to say, at least with me, while I was watching it, there definitely seemed to be like fishy moments. Just kind of like, and what I mean by that is like, while like the police were kind of like stating their side and stuff, you're kind of like, really? For example, at one point they were talking about how, it's suspected that he was kidnapped because there was like around five witnesses that had seen this young boy talking to someone in a car on like two separate occasions, I think, on that same morning. And, it's like no one actually physically saw him get kidnapped, but they were like, well, we literally had just seen him talking to someone in this car, and then 2 seconds later, the car takes off, and little Johnny is nowhere. Like, where did he go? So little things like that, and police are like, oh well, we have no confirmation that he was kidnapped. We have no confirmation. We have no evidence. It's like, and also too, they were saying in the movie that he always had taken his dog with him while he delivered these newspapers, and the dog was still there next to like his wagon or whatever that he had his newspapers in. So it's kind of like, everyone was saying like, oh, he's a runaway, or like the cops kept saying, oh, he's a runaway, oh, he must have run away. And it's like, well, first off, the dog is still there. Why didn't he take the dog? Or at least the dog would follow him. And secondly, a lot of people were saying who knew the family, knew this young boy Johnny, were like, no, he was not the type to like just up and leave and run away. Like, yeah, he's had, a little bit of a struggle with life, like he had lost his birth father and everything, but there was still no like reason for him and no indication that he would just simply up and run away. Just very interesting. To me, it was very interesting. And I think it's just, for me, it's like, I think I find this interesting is because, like I've been pretty open. I have three nieces and a nephew, one of my nieces is like a full grown adult, but, like I worry about her of, something happening to her, but, with like my younger nieces and nephew, like I always worry a little bit. Like there are days where I'm like, okay, hopefully, like I don't think they'll ever get kidnapped, but that always, at least from an aunt point or a parent's point of view, you always kind of like worry about that, even if it's like kind of like, usually like back in your mind, but you worry about that sometimes, or like one of their friends or something, you do kind of worry about that. So it's like, putting myself in this documentary, like, oh my God, like I'd be wrecked if something happened to one of them. Like I really would. But yeah, just it's a very, I don't know, I found it very interesting, and it's like they still have never found this kid. They even like started going into about like I think like years after he disappeared, they started to kind of like talk about like the sex slave trade industry and everything, and how like back in the early 80s, and it's very true, like no one knew about that stuff. No one knew about like sex trade and trafficking, human trafficking and everything. So they were kind of like, oh, maybe this is what happened to him. Maybe someone, kind of picked him up and was trying to sell him off and stuff. And they kind of like analyzed that aspect and everything. And I was like, man, like what if? Like, ooh, but yeah, just, pretty interesting. Although I have to say, and like, I feel bad for saying this because I feel like maybe her son's disappearance maybe, probably has, done some damage to her, but, I don't know. I feel like the mom is, not quite all there. And they even say kind of like in the movie, like people who have, kind of, you know, talked with her or had to like work with her and stuff, like, okay, she's a little abrasive. Like, okay, like we get it, your kid's missing, but there's other kids missing too. So just, I don't know, like, and even like in the film, like when she's being interviewed and stuff, like, so there are certain moments where I'm like, you're not playing with a full deck. Like I said, I feel terrible for saying that because I know I'd probably be like wrecked too. But whatever, my own little opinion. But yeah, just, check this movie out. Who Took Jonny? Like I said, it's on Netflix. Check it out. Let me know what you guys think. But yeah. Alrighty, guys. But until next time, stay creepy, classy, and as always, a little bit sassy.